To install the AS-OK1 O-ring kit in your Danair RN16 palm nailer, let's first open the kit up and get all of our parts out. We're going to have 6 O-rings, a 187 bumper, 112 gasket, and a small tube of lubricant. Go ahead and open up the O-ring guide, and there are displays of the O-rings so that you can get this sizing correct. The 187 bumper is a rigid urethane piece. And let me lay out these other O-rings so we get the correct O-ring in its proper location. There are a couple that are really close to the same size. At this point, let's take our 112 gasket and some of the 6 to 10 weight non-detergent oil that we use in the tool to moisten that gasket so that it will last over time and help the tool not leak air. So I'm just using a plate and squirting some oil on that while I assemble the tool so that it can soak in. We'll set that aside. Okay, we're going to start with the housing of the tool. Go ahead and take your 114 bumper, replace it back in the housing of the tool, fit it in there with your thumb hard to where it seats and it should be flush with the housing. Then we're going to grab our 3-143 O-ring. We're going to force it into that O-ring groove carefully. After it's in there, rub your finger along it to make sure that it is seated properly. Go ahead and open the grease packet that came in your O-ring kit. Apply a small amount of lubricant to that O-ring. Wipe around the entire surface so that it is coated sufficiently with that lubricant. And then set the housing assembly aside. Let's go ahead and assemble our cap assembly. We're going to take our cap, the 119 valve seat, push it in with your thumb as best you can, turn it over on a clean flat surface and put a little bit more pressure just to make sure that it is seated properly. It should be tight. You should not be able to take it out with your fingers. Then grab the 3-138 O-ring, force it carefully into the O-ring groove, rub your finger around it to make sure it is sufficiently seated. Apply a thin layer of the lubricant that came in the kit. Rub it all the way around the O-ring. You do want them to be completely coated with the thin layer. And the cap assembly is ready to be used. Let's assemble the motor assembly. Go ahead and take your 104 cylinder and your new 187 bumper. You want the rounded side down. Carefully slip it over there. The easiest way to get it on to where it needs to go onto that cylinder is take your 105 valve and force it down. Then rub your finger along there to make sure that it is seated in that groove properly. You should not be able to lift it out. Take your 2-33 O-ring and place it in the O-ring groove. Rub your finger around it to make sure that it's seated. Take a thin layer of your grease. And rub it around. Doesn't have to be exact, it just needs to be coating that O-ring. Your 105 valve, the O-ring groove is closer to one end than the other end. The 2-35 O-ring gets placed in that groove. Then the O-ring goes close to the 187 bumper. So slide it on to your 104 cylinder. At this point, flip it over. Take your 108 piston driver assembly. The 4-223 O-ring, which is the thicker of the two, goes on the top of the piston. It goes closest to the driver. The 3-131 goes on the bottom. You need to take a little bit more of your lubricant for these two O-rings. Rub it around to coat them. Place the piston driver inside, hold it up, Use the rest of the lubricant to coat the 2-35 O-ring on the outside. Once all your O-rings are coated with the lubricant, go ahead and place that motor assembly inside the cap assembly. Now is the time to rescue our gasket from that oil. I used Danair's pneumatic tool oil. It is a 6 to 10 weight non-detergent oil that is safe for all of our tools. And I'm going to remove the gasket. Go ahead and set it on my cloth. Kind of absorb some of the excess oil. Some oil may come out as you tighten your two cap and housing together, but that will be fine. Take the gasket, it doesn't matter which side you face up. Hold it on there, lined up with the cap. Turn your housing assembly onto it and tighten all 4 cap screws. Once we have all 4 cap screws tightened, we're going to put our nose and guide back on the tool. We want to put the 111 spacers in there. They are a little bit Pringle shaped, or they have a little bit of shape to them. It doesn't matter if you put all 3 going up or down or anything like that. They will act like a lock washer when you tighten this down. You drop all 3 of them in there. If you want to use all 3, that drives the nail flush with your product. You can either countersink by removing some, or you can add a spacer to leave the head above the plane if you would like. Screw your nose and guide assembly on there, tighten with a crescent wrench, and your tool is ready to go. Okay, I just showed you how to install the ASOK1 O-ring kit into the RN16 palm nailer. If you would rather install the rebuild kit, which has all of the internal rubber and urethane parts that the tool requires, instead of reusing the 114 bumper and the 119 valve seat that you took out of your tool during disassembly, you will use the new parts at the placement and put them in the place where they go. If you have any questions or need further assistance, you can contact Danair Inc. by calling 800-232-6247, or you can refer to our website, which is www.danairinc.com. Our email address is info@danairinc.com.